Hi and welcome back to Bike Speed. So this week we're dealing with this Scott Venture. Now the unusual thing about this bike, which is why we filmed it, is you can see there it's got the Gates belt drive on it, and this was actually way under tension. So you can see here how it's floating around. There's a lot of movement in that belt. It shouldn't be like that. These belts don't stretch. They're like a cam belt on your car. There's no stretch in them. They just deteriorate to the point where eventually they give. But on a bike that's very, very unusual for them to give. So you can see a lot of movement there. We've got this tension guide here, and you can see it's in the red where it needs a plus on the tension. It needs to effectively go into the green. So we're going to address that as we're doing the bike and get that tension correctly so that it's not slack, because at the moment with it being slack it can actually run off of the gears. You can see how it can literally just run off of its own gears because there's not enough tension to keep it on the gearing. We're also going to do a cable for the internal shifting. We're going to bleed the brakes on this one and just general service and sort out one or two problems along the way. So initially we're stripping down the bike. We wanted to clean it down. The frames on these belt drives have to have a joint, and I knew from experience that those bolts can absolutely corrode up, and you could see how that was beginning to corrode. So we're going to address the corrosion on that frame join at the same time as doing the rest of the service. Now the chain set on this was way over tight. We had to use a breaker bar on this. It was really tight, way beyond the torque wrench specifications for this bike. So again, that's a good reason to service your bike. We've actually got a video which potentially is coming soon. It's actually subject to a carbon repair. But if that video does come out, if we are able to finish that video, you'll really understand the importance of a stripped down service on a bike once in a while. We're hoping that video will come out at some point, but we're just waiting on a repair there. So we're stripping down all these parts. Now obviously this is Gates belt drive, there's no oil involved, so it's just a matter of cleaning up and just washing down and getting everything nice and clean, so that we can discover little faults and sort things out. One of the things the customer had asked us to do was retension the back wheel. I noticed at some point it had a new spoke. There was one individual silver spoke which actually you could just see above my finger there. So we washed down the wheel, clean it all up in preparation for sorting this spoke out and retensioning the wheel. And we clean up everything, we just check all the other spokes. It's just sort of a way of getting familiarised with the wheel. Just let down that tyre because we are replacing the spoke, so we need to get to the other side of the nipples. So we just stripped down the wheel. So this was it as it came in. So the wheel is heavily buckled, got an incorrect spoke. Now you can see here this spoke, actually just there is thread. This spoke was too short. They're very prone to breaking off on the nipple, so you'll get a failure of the nipple because there's not enough thread supporting the nipple itself. So we write down all the tensions as the wheel comes in. Then we remove this spoke that is one too short and two the wrong colour, and we're putting a nice brand new black spoke into here and a new nipple, and then a little bit spoke freeze on the spoke so it won't come undone and the tension alter after the wheel is completed. So you can see here on the left, this was the tensions and the way the little asterisks are. We did it within a 10% range on this wheel. There was a lot of spokes that were too tight, too loose within that range, and this was the wheel as it was completed, where we get full green ticks all the way through and all the tensions are even over the entirety of the wheel. So you can see here the left wheel there bobbling around, the right wheel, good tension and good trueness, so we're quite happy with that wheel to put that back on the bike, and even that can make a world of difference to the way a bike feels when you're riding it. So get the tyre on, get the logo lined up with the valve stem, get the tyre pumped back up, and then that's now ready to go back on the bike. And we are just going to clean up the disc as well. There was a lot of pitting on this disc and just debris, a little bit of grease, so we initially do this where we sand down the disc just to get rid of those grooves that can make a disc sort of sing like a record, and then a little wipe down with brake cleaner after I've sanded it down just to get all that debris right off, and that disc is as good as needs to be to give a good brake-in feel and without that squealing sound. Now also the rear brake of this bike, the lever actually was very soft when the bike came in, so initially we cleaned up those pads. You can see that the debris that's ingressed into the pad itself, we skim that off, and then we get to the stage where we just wash down the bike before we deal with that brake. So initially we're just washing down the bike. We felt the bearings, felt the headset bearings, felt the bottom bracket bearings, they all feel fine. So we're just going to wash this dirt and debris off, which will only inevitably cause the frame to corrode. So we give that frame a good clean up prior to putting it all back together, which you'll see in our other videos as well. That's the way we do. So please like and subscribe to the videos. Check us out on Instagram and Facebook as well. We're over there on Bike Speeds. We do sort of little day-to-day stories, little odds and ends that are happening within the shop. And you can see here I'm just cleaning out that thread. You can see the powder from that thread on the chainstay there. So we just blow all that out, clean up that thread so that when we put that bolt back in, we know we've got rid of the corrosion. And then we also had these tags of tie wraps here, which we discarded and got rid of, and then we put a new bridge onto the mudguard there. The old bridge had obviously, for whatever reason, disappeared, broken, disintegrated, whatever happened to that, and the customer had tie wrapped the mudguard to the forks, so we dealt with that along the way. That's the sort of little details we do when we're doing our servicing, just to get the bikes really nice when they go out. So like I said, we had this spongy rear brake, so we bled that through. You can see there a massive blobble of air that came through. There was definitely air in this system, so we work that through until we get new fluid right the way through the system and just bleed out any of the air that's in there, and that gave us a nice feel to the brake, so we solved that little problem there. I think I also did the front brake on this as well, so we bled through the brakes, and everything there was now as it should be. So we just angle those back down, and yeah, that's now looking good. Get the pads that we've cleaned up back in, so we've cleaned the disc, we've bled the air out of the system, we've cleaned the pads, and everything's nice there. Initially we weren't planning on doing this, but I noticed when we took the gearing off that the rear cable was just grabbing in its outer, so it was just hovering the downshift on the bike. So we decided to do the cable as well, so we put a new cable in, new outer, new inner. We could use the super slick cables which is talked about on road bikes. We used a little caliper there just to get the measurement roughly right. It gives us a benchmark point to start with our adjustments on the rear derailleur, just to get everything roughly in the right place. A little bit of grease on that bolt before we put that back in the frame, so that should stop that corrosion in the future, stop that sticking in the frame. It just future proofs if we ever have to replace the belt on this bike, that we will actually be able to get the bike apart to do that. And then we just do the little tweaky adjustment here on the tension of the belt, so you can see now that's within the green. It's actually dead in the middle of the green, which is where I like to get it. So we've now got that absolutely tensioned perfectly, so it's not going to slip off. It just is where it should be. So that was a worthy of the service, just to get that belt tension right, really. It's the little subtleties that make the big difference to the way a bike feels and the way it changes gear and everything else. So now that new cable just put in there, and we just did a little bit of adjustment on that to get the shifting absolutely spot on, and then we just start to begin to really tidy and finish up the bike. Put new cable ties on here. They didn't have the clips on here because there were actually 3 cables within each clip, so they're done with tie wraps. You can see the shifting of the gears there is absolutely perfect. And now we just begin to work our way through the bike with a torque wrench just to get everything spot on, and then we know that this bike is going to go out with good brakes, good shifting, be comfortable to use, freshened up just by washing it down. The bike was in a pretty sorry state when it came in, so this customer will get back on this bike and we'll just thoroughly enjoy it again. He'll remember why he bought it, why he fancied a belt drive, and he'll just go out on this bike the next time, and I know we'll thoroughly enjoy it. And actually he was talking to me, he'd got a few old road bikes and things, so he's someone who's obviously been into bikes for an awful lot of years, and this is probably his retirement bike, so he's going to be able to enjoy this one again. So you can see what a difference we made to this bike. Yeah, I think the rider of this bike will enjoy this for many years to come. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks for all the comments. Do comment and like and subscribe. Thanks again.